Hello, so today I'm going to be talking about two women who were involved in the anti-colonial resistance in Africa, and so their names are Zora Drift from Algeria and then Miriam Makeba from South Africa. And both women had complete different approaches to how they handled everything, but they both used similar ideas about the stereotypes around race and also women in general to be able to help them out. So before discussing their similarities and differences, first I'm going to be giving some background on Algeria and then also South Africa. So the French colonized Algeria around the 1830s, and they basically ruled for over a long period of time. And during the French rule, the French basically had priority on everything, so over like economic power, rule, and also over like the native Algerians as well. And so the Algerians basically became like second class in their own country. And then that's what started the resistance movement. So around 1950s, Algerians were fighting more for independence and basically just were fighting to get the French out of their country. So this is when the National Liberation Front basically started organizing attacks against the French colonial government to kind of send a message that they no longer want them there anymore. And the main people who were a part of these attacks were women, and they used women because no one would really suspect a woman because they were seen as somewhat less dangerous than a man. And then this is when Zora Drift came into this. So in her video, she basically starts explaining how it was an honor to be a part of this mission, and these girls were also called the Suicide Girls. And so to her, it felt like an honor to join the Suicide Girls because it felt like she was protecting her country, and she was willing to die on that hill. She was willing to sacrifice herself because a lot of these girls didn't come out alive, and so she knew the dangers and was willing to go through with everything. And in the primary source about Zora Drift, in the section titled How We Prepared for the Bombing, Drift basically says, if women were recruited into this armed group, we would blend into the European civilian population and conduct missions with far less risk of being arrested or killed. This just basically shows how colonial stereotypes basically became a tool for them that they were able to successfully use for their missions. So obviously French authorities assumed women were harmless, and so when these attacks would happen, they would mostly look for men, not women, because they never would have expected a woman would be capable of doing something like this. This made it easy for some Algerian women to be able to move easily through checkpoints because they used the fact that they're a woman to get through. Drift also explains in her memoir how her and some other girls would basically change up their appearance to disguise themselves or fit in with European beauty standards. So this kind of shows how the women were able to study the French and figure out what their style was, and also understand that looking more European can help them out in these missions, and also using femininity to disguise themselves to be able to carry out their bombings. And small details like using their femininity and then also dressing more European helped them out a lot. When she was at the milk bar and she placed down the bomb, she then goes on to order something and just enjoy it, and so it kind of just shows how calm she was, and she knew already that this was going to work, and so she was pretty calm about everything, and she really wasn't you couldn't really tell that she was stressed or worried because she knew that these advantages helped them out a lot. Okay, and now I'm going to be giving some background about South Africa. So at the time, the government basically separated people by race, and people who spoke out about this were usually imprisoned or they were silenced in many different ways. And they also had strict laws about that were very controlling, like where you could live, work, travel, go to school. And so Makeba basically became an international singer, and she used her platform to start speaking out about the government a little. She would claim she wasn't political, but she then would also speak out about certain activities going on in South Africa. And so with her popularity and then also her not being shy about voicing her opinion, the government kind of saw her as a threat. In the primary source, the memoir about Miriam Makeba, in the section Becoming a Celebrity, Makeba explains how people began to follow me. I learned that these people are fascinated by me because I'm African. This kind of shows how her race kind of became a very big part of her identity with her fame. And unlike the other girl, Drift, who more so hid her race and identity, Makeba more so kind of used that idea to explore her race and show off her race. And she publicly embraced the fact that she was from South Africa and also used it as a form of activism. And the government clearly didn't really like this, so they basically denied her access back into the country. And so her passport was invalid, and so she wasn't able to come back at all. And so this just kind of shows how threatened the government was from her, and just how much of an influence she had on a lot of people. And because of this, the government tried to basically silence her through exile. And then also in the primary source, her memoir, in the section Using My Platform, she basically, when she's speaking before the United Nations, she basically says, I must urge the United Nations to impose a complete boycott of South Africa. So this just shows how she was able to use her like big rise to fame to basically kind of pressure the government for her, like certain wants. And it also kind of in a way kind of exposes South Africa as well for all their wrongdoings. And this just kind of goes to show how even though she was just a singer, she had such a huge impact with like her activism. Even though she claimed she wasn't a political person, she still had a really big influence on the government here and then also the government over in South Africa. And so with her use of being able to express her race and then also use her fame to be able to demand certain things from the government or also speak out about certain problems going on in South Africa, she was able to help out a little just through her voice. And so both women were able to effectively resist colonial oppression, but they both went about it in different ways. So Zora Drift did it more in a hidden way, so she had to change everything about herself, everything about her race, to be able to just be a part of the Suicide Girls and complete her missions and do these bombings. And without these bombings or without these women, the war would basically be non-existent because they carried a lot of weight for the war. And Miriam Makeba used her singing and just her race too to basically show how beautiful her race is, and she wasn't afraid to hide who she was. And she also used her platform to speak out about South Africa and the wrongdoings going on in the government over there. And so with this, she was able to use her influence to help out. So even though both women went about things differently, they both showed just how important it is to use your race and the fact that you're a woman and the stereotypes surrounding all of this to your advantage. And these women clearly played the system to get what they wanted, and it ended up working really well for them. And in the end, they both had different missions, but it all just led to one thing, and they were able to do this through the fact that because they're women.